was over. Or so they sighed. Yet, walking through the broken villages of southern Germany in 1946, it didn't feel like peace. The air still smelled of smoke and old blood, and the forests whispered like they were carrying secrets no one wanted to hear. I had seen men die in worse places than this, but somehow, the silence after the war was heavier than the sound of gunfire. My name's Sergeant James Carter, 101st Infantry. They sent me back across the ocean to assist with post-war reconstruction, at least that S. What the paperwork said? In truth, I think they just didn't know what to do with me anymore. I couldn't sleep. I jumped at shadows, and I drank too much. They said a few weeks in the field might help. Some help. I was the only American left stationed near the village of Königs, a forgotten cluster of stone houses in the Black Forest. The people barely looked me in the eye. They still feared uniforms, no matter what flag they came under. The orders were simple. Investigate reports of strange noises near an abandoned church on the hill. Locals claimed it was cursed that the ground itself wept at night. Typical superstition, I thought. Still, the command wanted it checked out. Some soldiers had gone missing last month. Mine-clearing teams. Maybe unlucky, maybe careless. I took my rifle, my flashlight, and a flask of bourbon, and started up the hill at dusk. The forest grew darker faster than I expected. The last light drained through the bare trees, and the mist thickened until it felt like walking through smoke. Every step sank into wet leaves. Somewhere behind me, something crooked a branch, maybe. I turned, rifle ready. Nothing. The church appeared slowly through the fog. Tall, crooked, half-collapsed, its steeple leaning like it wanted to fall but couldn't. The front doors hung loose on their hinges. The stained glass was shattered, leaving jagged holes like open wounds. It must have been beautiful once. Now it was just bones. I stepped inside. The air was colder than it should have been, dead cold. Dust swelled in my flashlight beam, and the pews were overturned. On the altar, a wooden cross was burned black, the figure of Christ half melted by fire. Beneath it lay what looked like German prayer books, torn apart, pages scattered like feathers. Then I noticed the smell rot, but not fresh. Old decay soaked into the wood. Something moved near the pulpit. Hello, my voice echoed through the hall. Nothing. I walked closer, stepping over splintered boards. There, beside the pulpit, was a hole in the floor square, man-made. Someone had pried up the stone tiles and dug into the earth. It looked like a grave, or maybe a cellar entrance. A narrow wooden ladder led down into darkness. I felt a pulse of cold air rise from below, damp and thick. That's when I heard it. The faintest sound. A whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind through the ruins, but it wasn't. The sound was too low, too deliberate. Words, but not in English. Maybe Latin? The tone was like a prayer, said backward. I should have left then. I really should have. But I was still a soldier, and soldiers finish what they start. I lowered myself into the hole. The air below smelled of earth and mold. My flashlight beam revealed stone walls and old crypt, maybe from the Middle Ages. The steps ended in a small chamber. There were carvings on the walls, crosses, strange symbols, circles with eyes scratched out. At the center of the room sat a stone sarcophagus, its lid half broken. My heart thudded. The whispering was louder, now coming from inside it. I took a step closer. Is anyone down here? I said. My voice sounded small. The whispering stopped. Then something tapped from inside the sarcophagus. Once. Twice. Like knuckles on wood, I froze. Sweat ran down my back, even though it was cold enough to see my breath. The stone lid shifted. Dust fell. A low sound crawled out, a sigh, or a growl. I couldn't tell. My flashlight flickered. I banged it against my rifle. The beam steadied again, just long enough for me to see what was happening. A hand gray, shriveled slid, over the edge of the sarcophagus. I stumbled backward, tripping over a stone. The thing pulled itself up slowly, with a wet sound like paper tearing. It was a corpse, but not a fresh one. The face was sunken, the eyes empty. Its mouth moved, shaping words that sounded like he is not gone. Then it reached toward me. I fired. Once. Twice. The muzzle flash lit the crypt like lightning. When the smoke cleared, the figure was gone. Gone. Not fallen. Not bleeding gone. Only the echo of my gunfire remained. I scrambled up the ladder, gasping, boots slipping on the rungs. When I reached the main hole again, I slammed the trapdoor shut and dropped the pew over it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my rifle. Outside, the mist had thickened. It clung to the windows, pressing in like a living thing. The wind had picked up, too, but it wasn't natural. It carried voices now chanting, faint and broken. Then the church bell rang. I swear on every medal I ever earned it rang. The bell tower was half collapsed. The rope rotted away. But the sound was real, deep and hollow, echoing across the valley. The first toll hit like a heartbeat. Then another, then a third. Something was awake. I ran to the door, but it slammed shut before I could touch it. The hinges screamed. The cross above the altar fell, shattering on the floor. My flashlight blinked again, weaker now. That's when I saw them figures standing between the pews. Dozens of them, silent, watching. They wore tattered uniforms, German, Allied, even civilian clothes. Their faces were pale, hollow, their eyes black like burned paper. I backed away. "Stay back," I said, raising my rifle. They didn't move at first. Then one stepped forward, his mouth opened, and the sound that came out, wasn't he human it, was the same whisper I'd heard below, multiplied by a dozen throats. The ground trembled. The altar split down the middle, revealing something beneath metal glinting in the flickering light. I edged closer, drawn despite myself. It was a relic, a chalice or a cup, half buried in stone. The inside was lined with something dark. Blood, maybe. Old and thick. The whispering grew louder, all around me now. Words tangled together. He drank and was bound. He rose and was forgotten. I reached toward the relic before I realized what I was doing. My hand hovered an inch away when a voice clear human and close spoke behind me. "Don't touch it!" I spun. A man stood near the doorway, wrapped in a priest's cloak so worn it looked gray. His eyes were pale blue, but they didn't blink. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "Who are you?" I asked, lowering the rifle just slightly. "The keeper," he said. "Once. Long ago. I tried to bury it. They wouldn't let me." He nodded. Toward the figure stay where it gone, vanished into the fog that now seeped through the walls like smoke. "What is this place?" I said. "What happened here?" He looked at the shattered cross. "The war didn't start in 1939, he said softly. "It started here, long before men had guns. A priest tried to summon the spirit of mercy, but he called something else. They hid it beneath this church. Every war since has been its echo. I didn't believe him, not really, but my heart knew better. The air itself felt poisoned, as if breathing it was a sin." The priest turned toward the door. "It will follow you now," he said. "Once you've seen the relic, you belong to it." Before I could ask what he meant, he was gone like smoke drawn out by the wind. The chanting stopped. Silence returned. I didn't stay to question it. I forced the church doors open and stumbled out into the fog, gasping like I'd been underwater. The bell rang one last time behind me, though no wind moved the tower. When I looked back from halfway down the hill, the church was dark again, quiet, still, but I could still feel the whispers at the edge of my mind, calling me back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed in my tent near the base, clutching my flask and rifle. Around midnight, I heard the bell again. One toll, then two, then silence. When I opened my eyes, the inside of my tent was filled with fog, and there, pressed into the canvas from the outside were handprints dozens of them gray and smeared with ash. They stayed there until dawn. Morning never really came that day. A thin gray light filtered through the canvas of my tent, but it carried no warmth. The forest was silent to silent. Not even the crows dared to speak. I hadn't slept. My nerves were shot. Every muscle coiled like a spring. The images from the church replayed in Mahida's sarcophagus. The priest's hollow eyes, the relic half buried in stone. I poured a little bourbon onto my hands, as if that could wash the chill away. It didn't. By noon, I'd decided to head back up the hill. Madness, maybe, but the army hadn't trained me to walk away from unfinished missions. The official report would call it reconnaissance. The truth was simpler. I couldn't stand not knowing. The whispers still lingered in my ears like a tune I couldn't forget. The path looked different in daylit smaller. Somehow, as if the forest had grown overnight. Mist still clung to the ground in pale ribbons. When I reached the edge of the clearing, I stopped short. Someone had been there. Fresh boot prints, in the mud bigger than mine, heavier. I followed them to the church doors. They were open this time. Inside, the air was thick and metallic, like the inside of a tomb. My flashlight flickered again, weaker than before. I stepped over the broken pews and saw the altar hole again. No crack, no relic. The cross had been nailed upright, gleaming as if freshly polished. Ikno, Ithadanti looked that way the night before. Then I heard movement near the front measured. A man in uniform stepped into view. Not American. German. The insignia was faded, but unmistakable. He carried no weapon, only a rosary wound around his wrist. We stared at each other for a long moment. Tinny spoke, his voice brittle but calm. You heard it too. I raised my rifle slightly. Who are you? Lieutenant Weber, he said. What remains of him, at least. His eyes darted toward the altar. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same. He gave a hollow laugh. I was ordered to guard this place in 1945. My men disappeared one by one. I stayed. Someone had to. I lowered the rifle a fraction. What's in that crypt? Not a man, he said quietly. Something older. It wears faces when it needs them. Before I could ask more, a tremor shook the floorboards. Dust rained from the rafters. The bell above let out a dull groan, half strangled. Weber's face drained of color. It's waking, he whispered. The tremor grew stronger, pulsing through the stone like a heartbeat. My flashlight flickered out completely. Weber pulled a candle from his coat, lit it with shaking hands. The flame bent sideways, as if drawn toward the altar. We moved closer, both of us unwilling, both compelled. The surface of the stone shimmered an illusion, like Hite's. Then words appeared across it, carved by an invisible hand. Adveniat, umbra dean Latin, though the pronunciation formed itself in my mind. The shadow of God will come. Weber dropped the candle. Run, he said. I turned for the door, but it slammed shut again. The hinges shrieking, the windows burst inward, showering us with shards of colored glass. Through the openings, the fog poured in, thicker and darker than before, and within it, not soldiers, not men. They moved like smoke given form, their edges blurring, eyes glowing faintly. The whispering returned, no longer distant, but deafening. Layered voices speaking over each other. Weber clutched the rosary, praying in German. His words dissolved in the noise. One of the shapes lunged, passing straight through him. He stiffened, gasped, and then... He wasn't Weber anymore. His eyes rolled back, his mouth opened wider than humanly possible, and a voice that wasn't his spilled out. He is drunk. He will rise. I fired, though I knew bullets were useless. The candle guttered out. For a heartbeat, the world was nothing but the echo of the shot. Then, silence. When the smoke cleared, Weber's body lay crumpled by the altar. The fog retreated slightly, curling around the walls like a living thing that had been denied its prey. My hands shook as I reloaded out of habit. I kept talking. To him, to myself didn't matter. I'm getting out of here. I'm done. But something inside me didn't move. My legs felt rooted. The relic of chalice was there again, right where it had been before. Blood-dark metal, gleaming faintly. I took a step toward it. My reflection stared back, except it wasn't mine. The eyes were black. I stumbled back, choking. No, no. Then the voice came not from outside, but from inside my head. Calm, almost kind. You saw me. You can't unsee. Pain ripped through my skull. Images flashed drenches, burning cities, soldiers screaming prayers as shadows swallowed them whole. I saw the priest from the night before, younger, digging the crypt with bleeding hands. I saw him seal something inside and whisper, "Forgive me, Father." When the visions cleared, I was on my knees. The church was quiet again. Reba's body was gone. The chalice sat on the altar, waiting. I don't remember leaving. Only the cold air hitting my face outside. Back at the camp, everything was wrong. The tents were empty. Radios hissed with static. My watch had stopped at midnight. I tried to light a cigarette, but the flame kept going out. Then I heard footsteps behind me. "Cutter!" someone said. A familiar voice. I turned and froze. It was me. Same uniform, same scar on the cheek, same dog tags. But the other me was pale, eyes pitch black, mouth curved in a faint smile. "You left it open," he said, the door below. I backed away, rifle raised. "Stay where you are." He didn't move. "It's not about staying," he said. "It's about remembering. You brought it out with you. It's inside now." He lifted his hand and I saw the rosary twisted around his wrist. Weber's rosary. The beads pulsed like veins. The ground trembled again. The hill behind the camp split, a long crack running up toward the church. From inside came that same tolling bell. Slower now, heavier, like the heartbeat of something waking from centuries of sleep. My double faded into the mist. His last words followed me. "When the third bell tolls, the dead will walk." I don't know how long I wandered after that. Hours, maybe days. The forest stretched endlessly, paths twisting back on themselves. Every time I thought I was free, I'd look up and see the church steeple through the trees, closer than before. At sunset, exhaustion forced me to stop. I built a small fire, though the smoke rose straight down instead of up. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled, but their voices were wrong, echoing like they came from the ground beneath my feet. I took out my flask. Empty. The whispers started again, softer, almost gentle. "Drink." I looked down. The chalice sat beside me, as if it had been there all along. My reflection swam in its dark surface, eyes hollow. "Drink," the voices urged. "Remember." I threw it into the fire. The flames turned black, then blue, then went out completely. When the smoke cleared, the chalice was untouched, resting in the ashes. Dawn never came. The world just dimmed from black to gray. I found myself back on the road leading to Knig's. The village was deserted. Doors hung open, tables set, food rotted in bowls. The air buzzed with flies, but no sound of life. Then I saw the writing on the church wall. Fresh as blood, adveniet, umbra, day. The third bell began to toll. Once, twice. And as the third strike rolled through the valley, every window in the village shattered outward. From the churchyard, the ground broke open. Hands, hundreds of them pushed through the soil. Not rotten, not skeletal. Perfect. Whole. I ran. I didn't look back. But even as I fled into the woods, I heard them behind me, the footsteps of the risen, the whispers of the unseen, the echo of the bell calling me home, and beneath it all, one voice, my own, whispering the same words over and over. He will rise. I don't remember sleeping, only waking. The forest around me was gray and endless. each tree bent in the same direction as if bowing toward the church. My boots were caked with mud that pulsed faintly, like it had a heartbeat of its own. The air smelled of rain and rust. I knew I was being drawn back. I didn't fight it. There was no point. Each step up the hill felt like walking through molasses. The closer I got, the louder the bell became, not ringing now, but breathing. In and out, slow and deep. The church waited at the top, doors open wide, like a mouth. I crossed the threshold. The pews were gone. The floor had split in a jagged spiral, descending into the earth. From below rose a faint, steady glow of relics. And above it all, suspended in the center of the nave, floated the chalice, spinning slowly, bleeding light instead of shadow. A voice filled the room, low and calm. You carried me from the grave. You opened the way. Primera looked down. My shadow stretched long across the stones, but it didn't match my movements anymore. When I raised my hand, it didn't follow it, reach toward the chalice. No, I said. I didn't ask for this. You saw. You believe. That was enough. The walls began to pulse with faint light, patterns moving under the surface like veins beneath skin. I felt the air thicken until it pressed against my chest. Then the voices started, hundreds of them, layered and rising, chanting that same Latin phrase, Adveniat umbra Dei, the shadow of God. Something shifted inside me. I could feel it crawling under my ribs, whispering in my bones. It didn't hurt, it felt right, like coming home after a long war. I reached for the cross on my dog tags, gripping it until it cut my palm. I'm not yours, I said through my teeth. I've fought devils before. The whisper laughed softly. Not like me. The church bell let out a single toll so deep it rattled my teeth. The ground split open completely, revealing the crypt below, vast and glowing red. The air smelled of iron and fire. The same sarcophagus sat at the center, but its lid was gone. Inside was only darkness that seemed to breathe. I saw faces forming in the smoke vapors. The priests, the men I'd fought beside, the ones I'd shot. Their mouths all moved in unison. Drink and end the war. I took a step closer. My body moved on its own. My reflection shimmered again in the chalice's light, smiling faintly, blood trickling from its lips. That's when I understood. The war hadn't ended it, had just changed its battlefield. Every prayer, every bullet, every scream in every war. It had all fed this thing, a god born not of heaven or hell, but of human pain. And I was about to finish what the priest had started. I fell to my knees. The whisper surged. The chalice descended slowly, stopping inches above my hands. The air burned my lungs. I thought of home, the farm in Ohio, my sister's laugh, the sound of rain on tin roofs. They felt like someone else's memories. Then I heard another sound. Faint. Real. A bell, distant. Clear. Pure. The church's original bell, not the one made of bone and whispers. It came from outside, somewhere beyond the fog. 3 quick chimes, like a call to me. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe instinct. Maybe grace. I grabbed the chalice and hurled it at the altar. The light exploded. The wall screamed. Not creaked. Not cricked. The sound was alive, tearing through me. My shadow writhed, trying to pull free, but I held it down. Fire poured from the cracks in the floor, bright as daylight. I ran. The stairs, the door, the hill eye. Don't remember how I got out. I only remember the heat at my back and the sight of the church imploding in silence, stone collapsing inward like sand in water. Then nothing. When I woke, it was morning. Real morning. Sunlight on my face. Birds in the trees. The hill was empty. No church. No smoke. Just grass. For the first time in months, I couldn't hear the whispers. My hands were clean. My dog tags were gone. I walked back, toward the village. People were there now, real people, repairing roofs, hanging laundry. A woman waved to me, smiling. I didn't wave back. When I reached the edge of town, I saw a group of children playing near a fountain. One of them a boy with pale blue eyes was holding something small and metallic. He dipped it into the water, giggling as it caught the sunlight. Ah, chalice. Tiny. Perfect. He looked up at me and smiled. It makes the water red, he said in German. I stared. The fountain's water shimmered dark for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat to end. Then it was clear again. The boy ran off, laughing. I stood there for a long time, the sun warm on my face, the sound of bells echoing faintly through the valley. That night, in my journal, the one I'd kept since the war, rewrote my final entry. The war never ends. It just changes its uniform. The church is gone, but I think it's in me now. Maybe it always was? I closed the book and placed it on the windowsill. Outside, the moon hung full and silver, and somewhere in the distance, faint but clear, a single bell rang once, then twice, then a third time. End of the haunted church.